They're like, no, he was the one.
He's the OG.
If anyone was actually a werewolf, it was probably
this guy.
him. Yeah, we're gonna make a whole page for him.
This guy and Ted Bundy.
So he could have been a werewolf. I see it.
You see those eyes?
See those hairy forearms?
Hey, man. I'm in love with Ted Bundy.
Welcome.
Oh, here we go.
Welcome to the Low Grade Research Podcast.
I know we do this weekly, but why does it feel like every time it's been so long?
I'm not really sure. Because we see each other more than once a week for different podcasts. And so...
Different podcasts are just hanging out, but it's like, why was...
It really
It's
does
been
feel
3
like...
weeks.
Yeah, it's like a month every time we record.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. I don't know the answer.
If you know the answer, write in. hello@otherbrothers.studio. Plugging that early.
And let us know.
If you know science, let us know.
What's happening?
I'm trying to think. I've got to prep for this and remember what I do over the weekend every time I come back.
What do you mean?
Because I can never remember. That was days ago.
Remember what?
What I did over the weekend.
Oh, I thought you meant just like you don't remember how to talk into a microphone.
I don't
and
remember
stuff.
what I'm doing here right now.
Well, that's not good.
No, things are going good. Summer's like ending. You kind of like feel it. You know what I mean? So it's like on to the next thing.
I know what you mean.
I don't know if that makes sense to you guys.
Makes enough sense. No, it is kind of weird. Like we've been doing, like packing some stuff up, like bit by bit that we won't need for the summer anymore. And like in Utah, the weather during the summer is like 100 degrees during the day and then like 95 at night. But then finally you get into late August and September, and then it's still like 90 degrees during the day, but at least it goes down like 60 and like in the high 50s. And so...
Yeah, I say leaving in the mornings now. It's like mid-60s, and it's sweet.
Yeah, like keeping all of our windows open while we're sleeping.
Yes.
That's wonderful.
Yes, it was a great time of year,
Finally
honestly.
cooling off.
But yeah, like, just you get to that spot, and you're like, I didn't do everything I wanted to this summer.
Yeah.
C'est la vie, or however they say it.
C'est la vie. Shoot, I also just like dated this podcast inadvertently, so... Whoops.
Start over.
Sorry, folks. This was recorded weeks ago.
Hey, buddy, how's it going?
How's it going in October, pal?
It is the first part of October.
Yeah, great. That's still not even true. This is mid-October.
Yeah, but we don't record it the day before.
Oh, that's true.
We're not under any pretenses like that.
No. That's a peek behind the curtain, and we've let everybody down, and that's probably just fine.
Yeah. Thanks for keeping my motorcycle at your house over the weekend.
Yeah, you're welcome.
So that's a fun bit of news. I was driving down here last week because we were recording another episode for our other podcast, for our sister podcast.
Which is
the Third Row Critics. You should check us out. Movie reviews, movie lore, movie facts.
Recommendations, ratings from a bunch of dudes that have zero qualifications to be doing that. So
Other than we've seen a ton of movies.
basically, yeah, I mean, it's basically this podcast, but movie related.
Yeah, that's really anyone's credentials when it comes to being a movie critic. You've seen a lot of movies. But yeah, anyway, for those of you who don't know what a sprocket is on a bicycle or a motorcycle.
I don't. Tell me.
So on a sprocket is the toothed wheel that attaches to your rear wheel that your chain goes over, and your chain pulls the sprocket, which then turns the wheel.
Oh, so it's like a gear.
It's a gear.
Okay.
Sprocket is a gear in layman's terms, as they say.
Non-engineering terms.
Exactly.
Right.
That's not even engineering terms. That's just if you own a bicycle. It's still called a sprocket.
Yikes.
But my chain has been pulling on it, and it's been wearing my teeth down. And
In your mouth?
The teeth on the sprocket.
Teeth in the lips.
And now my sprocket's bald, so the chain just slides over it, and it won't turn the sprocket, which won't turn the wheel. So the motorcycle goes nowhere.
When Mitch says it's bald, the sprocket is supposed to have really pretty sharp teeth. so that it can fit in between the chain, the links on your chain, and then it has to have enough strength in those teeth to be able to hold the chain while it's pulling from the engine, and that's what pulls your back wheel. So it's the ones on Mitch's sprocket are like, they look like soft waves coming into the beach, like they're just like sloped over and don't have any gripping power at all.
It's got meth teeth.
Oh no! There goes a third of our listeners.
A third of our listeners use meth?
You wouldn't believe the amount of analytics we get through Spotify. They ask so many demographic questions.
Race, sexual identity, meth user.
How many pets? What kind of pets?
Yeah, YouTube's thorough.
Religious affiliation, political affiliation. Were you ever sad or scared by a clown when you were a kid?
All right, I'm curious about that one. Write us in. Tell us a story. hello@otherbrothers.studio.
When you were scared or made sad by a clown as a kid.
Yes.
We'll have a whole episode just dedicated to that.
Oh, good stuff.
Right on.
Well, today we are not talking about clowns.
Okay.
We're talking about something completely different.
So let me take a shot in the dark. Are we talking about anything that I'm going to say it's probably like a clown?
Okay.
And that a clown starts out as a man, and then with the progression of a curse turns into something horrific that scares children. Am I on to anything here?
I don't know the history of your experience with clowns, but it is way different than mine.
It's not good.
Curses?
What else would compel a person to do that?
Maybe just bad childhood experiences.
Which, you know that old... like that saying that you can go to, like, there's always clown college or whatever.
That's a saying?
Have you never heard that before?
No.
Like, oh, you suck at your job? Well, there's always clown college.
Maybe people had real low expectations for you.
You and I have lived really different lives. That's what we're finding out now.
For how closely our lives are integrated. We've lived different lives.
I've just lived scared and freaking pathetic in the eyes of everybody who's
looking
known
up
me.
Clown colleges to attend to.
Anyway, we'll have to do an episode on this at some point, but the whole idea of clown college is like, I'm going to say it wrong because I don't have it in front of me and we're just going on memory, but it's like loosely associated with one institution. So
yeah,
anytime you've ever heard of clown college, it's not even close to a thing. It's hilarious.
Yeah, there's one, and I think it's in France. Did you ever see that TV show called Baskets?
Yeah.
Did you watch some of it?
Zach Galifianakis, right?
Yeah. For those that haven't seen it, we recommend it. It's called Baskets. It's starring Zach Galifianakis, and he goes to this really prestigious clown college, which is like an art institute in France.
Wow.
Like it's high up there,
Yeah.
and you leave as a performer with this knowledge and degrees of art and performing.
Sure.
But he comes back to the United States and obviously can't find a job.
Yeah.
And so the only job he can find is that of a rodeo clown. Which, as we all know, is completely different. So he's like trying to do his like stage performances and little acts out in the rodeo arena, and like,
or there's a bull chasing down
loose
some
bulls
guy.
are running him down because he's not paying attention.
That's good.
It's worth watching.
All right, Baskets, check it out. And then send us an email to hello@otherbrothers.studio if you have any feedback about Baskets. We'll be sure to pass it along to Zach, who we're close friends with.
But no, we're not talking about clowns today.
Okay.
We are, however, continuing our series on Universal Monsters.
Ooh.
As in the monsters of Universal Studios.
Amen.
And today we're talking about the Wolfman.
Oh. Did you know that this is possibly my favorite of the Universal monsters?
Really?
Yeah. And when I say possibly, that's false. It's 100% my favorite of them. Yeah.
So it's one. It is cool. I really have not seen any of the Universal Monster movies. We've started watching them together a little bit because we're reviewing them in our sister podcast, Third Row Critics.
Check it out. And if you have any feedback about Third Row Critics, be sure to send us an email to hello@otherbrothers.studio.
Or we've got social media. But anyway.
But just email us.
No plugs for that.
Yeah.
So it's interesting, like researching and looking into these movies, having not seen a lot of them. I think it gives me a little bit of an unbiased view of it, but then going in watching them, I'm getting more out of it because I already know so much about it, because we've talked about it on 2 different platforms.
Sure.
So anyway, this is a cool movie, and I can't wait to watch it.
So this one is for Because I know that these Universal movies have gone through a bunch of iterations, right? So is this like 1930s or something? What is this one?
So this one was released in 1941.
41.
Yeah. And it's tricky. Yeah, you found the right one, because there's the Wolfman, but then there's also the Wolfman, spelled the exact same way, but it's short. That's like 8 minutes long.
Sure.
And often that's the one that pops up when you search it. So find the one that's a full-length movie. That's the one you want.
I guess that's probably true. The one that... Gosh, I think we probably watched it together. It'll probably be too long for me to try and find it.
Yeah, I don't know if I think I know the one you're talking about, but I don't think I've seen that.
Guillermo del Toro.
Benicio del Toro.
Benicio, yeah. I'm just going to search Del Toro. There we go. There's Benicio.
One of the Del Toros ought to show up. Handsome man.
He is a handsome man. I was going to say something rude about him, but I won't do that because he's great.
I know that movie was released in 2010. There it is, The Wolfman. One word.
Holy smokes. Nothing like podcast listeners listening to us browse the internet without being able to see what we're doing.
Because we don't edit anything.
No, this will sound like you'll get the full 25-minute pause of me struggling to spell Wolfman in IMDb.
You'll get all our pauses.
Yeah, that's 2010. That's my favorite one, I think. Except with the exception of... Gosh, they changed the name because it premiered at Sundance and then they called it something different, but we went and watched it together.
Did we?
Yeah, I want to say it was called Pieces of Eight before. The Cursed, maybe?
The Cursed sounds right.
Yeah, it used to be called like Pieces of Eight or something like that when they premiered it at Sundance. But that
was an interesting one.
Really, really good.
Yeah.
I really liked that one.
That was very scary.
It was very scary.
They have some really good cinematography in that film.
Yeah. So I don't want to jump ahead if you were going to talk about either of these, but if you haven't seen The Wolfman 2010 with Benicio del Toro or The Curse 2021, what are you doing tonight that's more important than that?
It's Halloween season. Go hot. Go watch a movie.
Yeah, go watch a scary movie.
Okay, so The Wolfman was released in 1941.
Okay.
And it was actually not the first werewolf movie that Universal Studios released.
Okay.
The first one that they released
But it is the first one they released during World War II.
That is true.
That's a little bit of trivia for you low-gradiacs.
Low-grade learners.
Low-graniacs. Gradiac?
Still working on a name for our fan base.
We'll figure it out. I hate that podcasts do that, by the way. You listen to like Armchair Expert, Dax Shepard, fantastic podcast, fantastic show. But they call their fans armchairies. And every time he calls his fans anything, I'm just like, ugh. Like,
why can't they just be fans?
How about, I don't even like the word fans. How about they're just people that like your show?
They're listeners.
Yeah.
That's fair because my interest changes week to week.
Yeah. You think I'm a fan of Conan O'Brien? That's a bad example. I'm 100% of the time.
Always a fan every day of the week.
Yeah. You think I'm a fan of... I listen to two podcasts. You think I'm a fan of others? Yeah, that's it. Stick it to them. All right, sorry.
So the first movie, werewolf-themed movie that Universal released was called The Werewolf of London.
Ooh.
Released in 1935.
Okay.
And sadly, this film was not as well received as The Wolfman would be. So it was released, put out, watched, reviewed, and people were just kind of like, all right, neat.
For The Werewolf of London?
Correct.
Okay.
Yep, that's the one.
Sure.
That's the one. So it didn't get as good as a reception as the other one did. So kind of a big risk.
Yeah.
6 years later, putting out a second werewolf movie and hoping this one landed.
Yeah.
So.
If that's like the timeline on Hollywood today is if you screw up one thing, it's just done forever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, you're blacklisted.
Even if you had huge plans, even if, say, Universal was going to release something called, I don't know, The Dark Universe, and then had one such horrifically delivered movie that it ruined plans for a whole universe.
Funny enough, we're going to talk about The Dark Universe towards the end.
Oh, you don't say.
I do say.
All right.
But first, we're going to talk about The Wolfman.
Hit me.
So this movie stars Lon Chaney Jr. as Larry Talbot, which is the name of the
Do you think that people
Wolfman.
in high school called him Lawn Chair for short?
When was Lonnie born? Did they even have high schools back then?
He for sure was called Lawn Chair back
Come
then,
on.
dude.
Well, he was born in 1906, so early 1920s he was in high school.
Was this... Hold on, which movie were
So
we
that's
talking about?
the Great
Werewolf of
Depression.
London? Or we're talking about...
We're talking about the Wolfman.
Okay, we're back to the Wolf.
Yeah, we're back to the topic at hand.
Okay.
So, where is he?
There he is.
Lon Chaney Jr.
Lon Chaney.
That's funny. He's listed so far down that list, but he's the title character.
Yeah, I don't really know how they... When they list him out on IMDb, I know that there's top build cast,
Right.
which are like the big names.
It's typically the big names.
And you get that if you're on the mobile app, but then if you look at it on a computer, it seems like it's...
So this one also features an actor we've talked about before. You might notice Claude Rains.
Claude Rains. Yeah, who's he?
He plays the Invisible Man, which we've already talked about.
Ah, yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
So he reappears in this movie, not as the Invisible Man, but as Larry Talbot's father.
Weird move.
Yeah.
All right. I can dig it.
So he plays the father. Let's see. Just some quick movie facts. So yeah, starring Lon Chaney Jr.
Yep.
as the Wolfman, directed by George Wagner.
Okay.
And this was really... So he worked on a few other monster movies for a time, but this was really his only film that he was known for.
Sure.
Or that kind of landed. So yeah, this was by far and away his best work. And the film was written by Kurt Siodmak. It's tricky to say.
I think Kurt
SIODMAK. He was Jewish German, so it was a tricky one.
That is kind of a rough combo
So yeah.
in terms of pronunciation.
So yeah. We're gonna talk about Kirk a little bit, since he was the writer of this film.
Yep.
And he was an interesting dude. So Kurt was born in Germany, and he actually received a degree in mathematics
Okay.
from a university in Germany, but then decided, you know what, I really like writing. I'm going to pursue this. And it went super well for him.
Really?
Yeah.
Great.
So-
Perfect.
So primarily he was a novel writer, but then he began working on screenplays after he moved to England in like the late 1920s, early 1930s.
Nice.
He fled Germany when anti-Semitic propaganda began to spread by
Good
the
for
Nazi
him.
Party.
Good for him.
So he kind of had his finger on the pulse as far as like something's about to happen here.
Yep.
So that was, early 1930s, and then he moved to the United States in 1937. Fun fact, too, which I think you'll like this. So his brother is Roger Siodmak,
Mm-hmm.
and he is a famous Hollywood director specifically for film noir, which I know
Beautiful.
you're a big fan.
Huge fan of film noir.
Yeah.
If you listen to our other podcast, Third Row Critic, it'll be ad nauseum is how much I talk about film noir.
So his big one that his brother directed was called The Killers,
Okay.
which you may or may not have heard of, but it's a pretty popular film noir movie.
The Killers.
Mm-hmm. So there's The Killers, and then there's one that we reviewed in Third Row called The Killing.
Right.
Yes.
I feel like I've seen The Killers, though.
You may have. It's with starring Burt Lancaster.
Hitmen arrive in a small New Jersey town to kill an unresisting... Weird way to say that. To kill an unresisting victim. And insurance investigator Reardon covers his past involvement with a beautiful, deadly Kitty Collins.
Oh, Kitty Collins.
I think I have seen this, actually. Gosh, it looks great, though.
Yeah, looks awesome.
Classic 1940s black and white
that's
film
right,
noir.
because this one's based off of a book by Ernest Hemingway.
Ah, okay. Nice. Well, I'm going to definitely watch that after we're done recording tonight.
I know, right? Sounds awesome.
Yeah.
So, let's go back to Sweet Kurt.
Okay.
So, Sweet Kurt,
Is that what people called him?
they probably did.
Sweet Kurt.
Once he moved to the United States.
In Hollywood.
Yeah. Sweet Jewish Kurt.
I don't think they would have called it. Well, actually, for the
That's 100%.
early 1900s, they probably would have
why
called
he
him
left
that.
Germany.
Yeah. I'm not sure we can use any of what we just said
It's
in
risky.
the final cut.
It's risky.
We are riding the line so hard.
Risky. It's right on the edge. So his big break in Hollywood came when he was hired to write the screenplay for The Wolfman.
Oh, cool.
So
this is the big one.
Yeah, so he'd worked kind of as a associate writer or in participation with writing other films, but this was the one that he was in charge of and credited for, and it went super well for him.
Yeah, I'd say.
So well enough that a year later he wrote a book titled Donovan's Brain.
Okay.
Which is the story of Dr. Patrick Corey, who attempts through a series of experiments to keep the brain of a wealthy millionaire alive.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. So the book was an instant success.
Yeah.
Probably his best literary work. And that book, or the story of that book, has been adapted into 3 separate films.
You're kidding me.
Yeah. So the book was published in 1942, and the third film came out in 1962. None of them are related. They're all 3 separate adaptations.
Still, though.
But within 20 years...
have your book be made 3 times into a movie?
3 people were like, let's make movies out of this.
Wow.
So the first one is called The Lady and the Monster. The second one is called Donovan's Brain, after the book.
Sure.
And then the third one's just called The Brain.
The Brain.
Yeah. Super, super cool looking.
Yeah.
And I think this is a book I'd love to read.
Right on.
And I'm not a big reader.
That's okay.
I read little words.
You're a good listener.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So, all right, let's talk about the plot of this movie.
All right.
Larry Talbot.
Ooh.
Just a regular guy.
Yeah, I bet he is.
Regular guy. Returns to his ancestral home in Wales. I'm not going to try and pronounce the name that they used for the movie.
How about you struggle through it?
Let's go with Llanwelly.
Sounds good enough to me.
He travels back
As 2 clearly Welshmen ourselves, I'm thinking you're spot on.
He travels back home, at his ancestral home, not even his real home,
Sure.
to bury his recently deceased brother
Yep.
and reconcile with his estranged father,
Sounds awesome.
Sir John Talbot, who is played by Claude Rains, the Invisible Man.
Tell me that this all takes place on like some creepy manor out in the moors.
Ooh, I don't know if it's out in the moors, but there's creepy manors for sure.
Yes.
So, while out there, Larry falls in love with a local girl named Gwen Conliffe,
Nice.
who runs an antique shop.
Oh, Gwen.
So that's kind of creepy.
Oh, no.
Antiques are
I
creepy.
thought that's kind of quirky and fun.
Well, she is, but once you get into the antiques...
I guess antiques in the 1900s all had the potential to kill you. It's not like antiques now.
So, looking
Not
for...
just a fun day of shopping. No.
It's all
You're getting
cursed. So, as an excuse to talk to sweet Gwen,
Yeah.
he purchases a walking stick that's decorated with a silver wolf's head.
Okay.
Gwen tells him that it represents a werewolf, a man who changes into a wolf at certain times of the year.
Nice.
The werewolf always sees a pentagram in the palm of his next victim. Various villagers recite a poem whenever werewolves are mentioned.
A pentagram in the palm of his victim?
He does, yeah.
Wow, that's a cool bit of lore you never see pop up anywhere else.
No, well, and it's specific to this movie.
Wow.
So, that's kind of the plot of this film. Let's talk about actual origins of werewolves.
Yeah, let's hit it.
So, the folklore of werewolves dates back to the Middle Ages.
Okay.
Although there's a few references.
What years are the Middle Ages?
So, the Middle Ages was like 500 AD to 1500 AD.
Quite in the middle.
So, as I said, werewolves date back kind of the Middle Ages. That's where you see most of the folklore behind them.
Yep.
Although there's a few instances that indicate they were also part of ancient Greek folklore as well.
Really? Cool.
Yeah, so a long time ago.
Yeah.
So the persecution of werewolves...
That doesn't surprise me about ancient Greeks, though. They just had...
Not really.
And had folklore for every single minute of the day.
And the little bit that is there, it seems it's more like... gosh, how do they call it? Almost like communicating with animals, specifically with wolves. So almost kind of in line with witchcraft.
Sure.
Which we're about to talk about. Because we kind of see the majority of like werewolf stuff happen during the time when people were being accused of witchcraft.
Okay.
Back in the 1500s, the Middle Ages, if you will. So the persecutions of... Usually if you're being persecuted for being involved in werewolfery, it was included as part of witchcraft.
Okay.
So, and generally,
like you are a witch or participating in it yourself, or you're a tool of.
Little of both.
Oh, okay.
Depended on the situation, because if you were being convicted of communicating with wolves, then you're obviously dabbling in some sort of dark magic.
Right. Clearly.
So, kind of both. If you were then associated with someone that was being accused of witchcraft, then you were being charged as a tool or an accessory of.
Sure.
Right?
Your tool.
Yep. So werewolf, or the transformation into a wolf, is actually called lycanthropy.
Okay.
So, that's what they call it. So they called it, let's see, accusations of lycanthropy were mixed with accusations of wolf riding or wolf charming. So if you even sat on one, you're done.
Yeah, I'd like to see that work out in real life.
You're getting burned at the stake.
I know. You're going to get ripped in half by a wolf. Have you ever tried to sit on a dog, let alone a wolf?
Well, I say, like most domestic dogs, a lot of domestic dogs that we have today are descendants of wolves and coyotes and things like that.
Right.
So, like, they had to start somewhere.
Right.
And the first people were being accused of witchcraft and lycanthropy.
Oh, no.
Yeah. Oh, yes. So one of the more famous cases of lycanthropy is that of Peter Stump.
Okay.
Yeah. And we're going back quite a ways.
Okay.
There's not an exact date of when Peter Stump was born.
Stump.
Because records.
Okay.
But he died in the year 1589, so a long time ago.
Sure.
And even still, he's one of the more famous werewolves. So he was actually a wealthy German farmer and allegedly a serial killer. And
I'm intrigued.
yeah, leading to his death, he was accused of werewolfery, witchcraft, and cannibalism. Ooh. And he was known as the Werewolf of Bedburg, which Bedburg is a city in Germany. So this was taking place in Germany.
Sure.
So from what I read, it seems like he was actually a serial killer.
Well, okay.
That part is true.
The cannibalism and the murder are things that I think are believable.
Right.
The werewolfery seems a little bit far-fetched.
That part is true. The murder. But it seems like he was trying to go the route of, the reason I was doing this is because I'm a werewolf.
Oh, so or like pleading insanity?
Or at least someone indicated that, and so he's like, yeah, I'll go with that. Because maybe I can get away with it. Maybe I'm not just a murderer, but I've been possessed. And we'll see how that goes.
I will say, I've just pulled up pictures of Bedburg, and it looks just lovely.
It looks gorgeous. Wow.
It's like German Venice. Wow, that's stunning.
Yeah, that's incredible.
Anyway.
Wow. So, kind of a cool... So here's one of the evidences that people use to at least peg him as the wolf that's been killing people.
Mm-hmm.
So obviously wolves were probably a little more common back in the day as far as like where they roamed. We weren't really hunting them at the time.
Right.
So people would see them more often. So Peter Stump, the name Stump may have been given to him. And I should preface, a lot of this information was discovered in a pamphlet.
Okay.
That was found in 1920. It describes Stump's life, his alleged crimes, the trial, and statements from neighbors and witnesses on the crime.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
So, and that was, discovered, almost 400 years after he died. So,
wow.
What a cool find.
Yeah, no kidding.
What a cool find. So, let's see here. Where was I at? So Stump may have been a reference, the name Stump may have been a reference to the fact that his left hand had been cut off, leaving only a stump, in German, a Stumpf.
Okay.
And it was alleged that as the werewolf had its left forepaw cut off, then the same injury proved the guilt of the man.
Sure.
So one of the wolves that they noticed in the town that they suspected of killing a young girl that was in the town, a pregnant woman, they noticed had a stumped paw.
Wow.
And so because Peter had the same thing, ironically enough, he was accused of being a werewolf.
Wow.
So, but he was actually killing people.
Okay, but you know what's crazy? I mean, who can say what reason the serial killer's mind contains? But
Sure.
if he's sitting and thinking, I'm going to try and play up this werewolf angle because like what? They just burn him at the stake in a more horrific way because they're trying to murder it. Like the idea, a serial killer is bad enough, but
Sure.
if you've got a serial killer in your town, you're going to want to get rid of the serial killer.
Right.
If you've got a werewolf in your town, the entire town is going to get together to burn that thing alive and make sure it's never going to hurt their kids. You know what I mean?
They did a lot worse than burning him.
Okay.
Being burned alive sounds okay.
Oh no.
Yeah, we'll go into that.
Oh, Peter.
Gosh, let's just honestly, I might just read the accusation sections on his, because he's the only person on the whole werewolf page that's even referenced.
Really?
Yeah. They're like, no, he was the one.
He's the OG.
If anyone was actually a werewolf, it was probably
this
him.
guy.
Yeah, we're gonna make a whole page for him.
This guy and Ted Bundy.
So he could have been a werewolf. I see
You
it.
see those eyes?
See those hairy forearms?
Amen.
Oh, gosh.
I think I'm in love with Ted Bundy.
Oh, yikes.
All right.
All right, well, let's talk about Peter Stump.
All right.
So,
Should we do that after a quick word from our sponsors?
Let's do it.
Hey, Mitch.
Hey, what's up?
Are you ignoring the incessant beeping of your smoke detector and blaming it for your failing marriage?
Yeah, but that's just because I took the batteries out for the remote.
Well, look no further than GHM Handyman work for all your home care needs. From electrical to plumbing, appliance installation, appliance repair, sprinklers, woodwork, and everything in between, no job is too big or too small.
Listen, folks, jokes aside, there are two big problems you'll face when looking for a handyman. The first is the white-hot embarrassment knowing you can't change your smoke alarm battery and your marriage is falling apart. The other thing, and this is a big one, not knowing who to trust. Dear listener, you know us.
We know you.
You listen to the Low Grade Research Podcast for verifiable facts that you can trust. So you can trust us when we say you won't find a more honest, hardworking, and customer-oriented handyman out there. If he can't fix it, he won't sleep until you're happy, or your money back.
So if you live in Utah County, get your free quote today. Call Matthew with GHM Handyman Work at 385-375-4162. That's 385-375-4162.
Mention our podcast for a discount on your next service. GHM Handyman Work, your one-stop shop supplying serious solutions for all your home repair needs. All right, I'm ready to get back into it.
What a rich, fulfilling message from our sponsors.
Go check them out. But right now, we're talking about Peter Stump.
Peter Stump.
So during 1589,
Oh my gosh.
he had one of the most
That's so old.
lurid and famous werewolf trials in history.
Awesome.
And this is towards the end of the Middle Ages, so
Okay.
there'd been many.
Right.
So let's talk about his torture. After being stretched on a rack, and before further torture commenced, he confessed to having practiced black magic since he was 12 years old.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, a long time. He claimed that the devil had given him a magical belt, which enabled him to metamorphose into the likeness of a greedy, devouring wolf.
Okay.
Strong and mighty, with great and large eyes,
You need to
which
calm
in
down.
the night sparkled like fire, a mouth great and wide, with most sharp and cruel teeth, a huge body, and mighty paws. End quote.
Okay.
That was all in quotation.
Wow.
So removing the belt, he said, made him transform back into his human form.
Okay. How are you working a belt buckle with freaking wolf paws?
I think you're getting into the weeds of things.
Starting to think there's holes in your story, Peter.
I think you're getting into the weeds of things. If he can talk to the devil, then a wolf can
No,
take a belt
I'm thinking
off.
if he's on trial for being a werewolf and his key piece of self-prescribed evidence is this belt.
No, he was like, at this point, he just kind of started leaning into it, it sounds like.
Oh boy.
So he told the town that, like, oh, I left the belt in this valley. If you can believe it, it was never found.
No way.
Go figure.
Wow.
So his key piece of evidence is still out there somewhere.
That wouldn't have helped him either way if they'd found it, right?
I mean, maybe if he put if he put it on. I mean, that's fair enough. He just confessed to saying like, yeah, I've been doing black magic for a long time.
I've been murdering and doing black magic, and I'm having a great time.
Yeah, and I'm loving it. So.
Yeah. Okay.
So for 25 years, Stump had allegedly been an, again in quotes, insatiable bloodsucker.
Wow.
Who gorged on the flesh of goats, lambs, and sheep, as well as women and children.
Yikes.
Being threatened with torture. And this is another thing. If you look more at like the history of the witch trials and stuff,
yep.
It was almost, well, it wasn't almost. They basically threatened people with such torture that they would confess to anything.
Yeah.
Right? And it sounds like they did a lot of that here.
Which, speaking of the witch trials, if you get a chance to go to Salem, Massachusetts, a suburb of Boston, I don't think it is. Is it a suburb?
We'll say a town outside of Boston.
It's real close to like the actual, like Boston proper, right? Mm-hmm. But there's a super old graveyard there. Like Salem is like Halloween themed 365 days of the year.
Yeah.
But we happened to go in October, and so it was like ramped out the wazoo with Halloween theme.
It is crazy.
It was unreal. It was like a Halloween festival over the entire town. But
yeah, it was dope.
Very cool. There's an actual graveyard with memorials for the people who were victimized during the Salem witch trials.
It's really cool.
Very cool.
So Stump, also being threatened with this kind of torture, confessed to killing and eating 14 children and 2 pregnant women.
Oh my gosh.
Mm-hmm.
That's horrific.
One of the children was actually his son. So he may have killed his own son.
Ugh.
Yeah, it's rough.
That's
gross,
rough, dude.
So let's see. Where was it where they talk about his execution? Here we are. The execution of Stump, oddly enough, was on Halloween of 1589.
No kidding? For real?
Appropriate. For real.
No way.
So alongside his daughter, because his daughter was actually accused of aiding him in some of his actions.
Well, that's not great.
He was put to a wheel. So this was after he was put on the rack, which if you don't know what the rack is, they tie all 4 limbs, spread out like a starfish,
mm-hmm.
and then they start stretching you out.
Yuck.
Which someone recently sent me a meme with someone on a rack, and they said, don't you think for like just the first little bit, that would feel really good?
I mean, probably get some good pops and cracks in there.
Right? And then afterwards, it's going to get rough.
Yeah, and then that's a real fine line before it's unbearable.
So he was tied to this wheel where, and again in quotations, flesh was torn from his body.
Oh my gosh.
In 10 places with red-hot pincers, followed by his arms and legs. Then his limbs were broken with the blunt side of an axe head before he was beheaded and his body burned on a pyre.
Okay.
Yeah, and his daughter had to watch it all before she was then executed. Heavy.
But like how... I don't want to dive too deep into the torture part of it because I feel like that's maybe a little gross, but let's do it. So... how long do you think he lasts? Like, at a certain point, he's no longer living while they're carrying out these tortures, right? It has to be.
I mean, gosh. I mean, I'll bet he could stand a half hour of ripping his skin off.
Ugh. That's horrific.
And then, I mean, you don't die from broken bones, but that
unbelievable pain
is unbelievably painful to just have them bludgeoned into being broken.
I will say this for the people of Bedburg. Like, you watch a good horror flick today, and they find the guy, they know the crimes, and it's like, usually at the end, it's like, all right, we got him. We could kill him right now and end everything forever. Yeah. And then it's like, I think he's dead enough, and let's move on. And then another movie comes out where they're super wrong. People of Bedburg aren't taking any freaking chances.
There were no sequels in Bedburg.
No. They killed this dude 15 times over. Rasputin had it easier than this guy had it.
Oh, for real, though. Yeah, they were thorough. And kudos to them.
No kidding.
For their thoroughness.
Well, that's Germans for you.
Well, we're done talking about the history of werewolves and terrible tortures. Let's get back to the movie that we originally were talking about.
Just a quick rest stop on the trip to torture.
Yeah. So let's talk about the monster, the Wolfman.
Okay.
So Lon Chaney, as I said, was the actor that played the Wolfman.
Oh, Lon Cherry.
So this was the There were actually 4 movies in which the Wolfman appears.
Okay.
This is the only one where he's the title character.
Okay, sure. But are these 4 movies? Are there 3 sequels to this movie?
They're not sequels, but he appears...
Kind of reboots?
No, he appears in sequels for other Universal monsters. So, like, for example,
sure.
Universal released a movie called Frankenstein and the Wolfman.
Okay.
So Frankenstein's the title monster, but the Wolfman is also a part of it.
But Lon Chaney was not the actor.
Actually, a fun fact about that, Lon Chaney is the only actor that portrayed a Universal monster that continued to portray that monster throughout the 1940s.
Wow, really?
So he was the Wolfman in all 4 of the movies that the Wolfman appears.
That's kind of cool.
Yeah, something that he was obviously very proud of because he was the only one that reprised his role out of everyone else. So. Right. So yeah, cool little trivia there for you.
Very cool.
So, but in this first one, in all 3 of the others, it actually shows a transformation, a head transformation into the wolf. This first movie is the only one that doesn't show that.
Okay.
At the end of the movie, it shows a de-transformation. But his first transformation in this movie just shows basically from his knees down.
Oh, sure.
So that's kind of how and then they just show him as the monster.
It's the 1940s. How do you possibly even do that effectively?
It is tricky.
No
and
kidding.
Lengthy.
Really?
So lengthy. So in order to film a transformation scene, they had to use what they call lap dissolve progressive shots.
Okay.
And shots with various stages of him going through makeup.
Sure.
And like I said, that part was only seen in the final 10 minutes where he's killed and then detransitions back into a man.
Sure.
We'll talk about that. Well, first we're going to talk about the first transition of the movie. After Larry gets attacked by a wolf and he's starting to feel like something's happening, something's changing, and he's learning about the legends of the werewolf. So in his first transformation, Larry removes his shoes and socks, and you see his feet slowly start to get hairier and hairier.
Okay.
And basically the way that it's done, and I guess I'll talk a little bit more with the face shot, but so in this one, his feet get hairier and hairier until it just transitions into like full wolf's feet with claws.
Nice.
And they made these, what he says, were terribly uncomfortable prosthetic boots.
Okay.
That basically, have you seen the film?
I haven't.
Oh, you haven't seen the film. This is just your favorite monster. So in the film,
I've seen subsequent, almost all of the Wolfman movies, but I've never seen the original.
So in this one, it just basically looks like, because you know how a wolf's foot is laid out, where there's a paw and then kind of the ankle goes up at an angle, right? So they tried to recreate that.
Okay.
But it just looks like he's walking in high heels without the heel on it.
Okay.
Right? So he's like, they're incredibly uncomfortable. They're just made of rubber, so my feet are sweating, and then they're covered in yak hair.
Nice. Welcome to Hollywood, baby.
Yeah. So, talking about the makeup process for this movie and the shots that they made. So, just applying all of his makeup to get up to full Wolfman status, the process took between 5 and 6 hours. And then to take it all off took an hour alone, just to remove all of his prosthetics and hair and makeup that made him the Wolfman.
That's unbelievable.
So long. So Lon Chaney said that he was forced for times. So there's times where he had to sit super still because for the time lapse and the transformation stuff, basically what would happen is they would shoot a small portion of film. He would leave, go get additional makeup added or removed. It wasn't clear which direction they went, if they totally make-upped him up and then took it off for the ending scene, or if they just added it on and then showed it in reverse.
Right.
Either way, he had to sit completely still on a marked spot on the ground.
Yeah.
And then they would film a stretch. He would leave, go get more makeup and hair added to his face, come back, do it again, do it again, do it again. And then they would just overlap. Basically, kind of how they did it back in the day was they would overlap the film. So the ending film would overlap with the new film that had him with the makeup on. So that's how you see like...
kind of dissolve into the new one?
Exactly, exactly. So he.
I'm so into this, by the way.
It's super cool, right? Like
So cool.
It's so cool. So frame by frame, he had to just sit and remain like perfectly still, and they even on like the frames, they had to, or on the camera, they had to like draw an outline of him so they knew where he was placed, so that his head would remain perfectly still.
Sure.
So, and because it was so monotonous to like remove and add makeup on, oftentimes he was just kind of left in the studio, just sitting there, because everyone's like, "All right, let's go take a break."
Oh my gosh!
And
except for you,
Lon. Like, we'll bring you back something later.
Yeah.
So he said
maybe.
he said there was a couple times where he's just like left there, and he's like, "I gotta like," because he was supposed to remain still.
Yeah.
He's like, "I gotta use the bathroom.
Right.
Like, I need to move," and they're like, "Tough break, kid."
Oh my gosh!
So he just kind of sat there for a while.
They just have a poor PA sitting and keeping watch over him.
Don't move, Lon.
Don't move, Lon.
So, okay, here's the note. Here's
Your
my notes. Your
salary's about to go soaring out the window, Lon.
So to film his de-transformation shot, a plaster mold was made to hold his head still.
Okay.
As his image was photographed and then his outline drawn on panes of glass in front of the camera. Chaney would then go to makeup to have his costume applied. It involved grease paint, a rubber snout, and a series of wigs made of yak hair that were then glued to his face. Chaney would return to set, line himself up using the panes of glass as a reference, and several feet of film was shot. Then Chaney would return to the makeup department and do that process all over again. A new layer would be applied to show the transformation being further along. He would then return to the soundstage to film. This process was done about a half dozen times. Let's see. So, and while the transition on screen, the transformation, only is like, it's like a 5-6 second scene.
Sure.
You can find it on YouTube. The time it took to shoot that scene was almost 10 hours.
Oh my gosh.
So monotonous.
Because they just had to sit and add and add and add.
Yep, they just had to keep adding and adding and adding.
Unbelievable.
So fun stuff. Fun day of filming for Larry.
No kidding.
So hope that makes sense. I had to do a lot of digging to find all that.
That's really fascinating, actually. And I mean, I'm just scrolling through pictures of the film on IMDb, and like, I don't know, like we've never seen this movie, either of us. You haven't either, right?
That's right.
But I mean, these pictures hold up. That's pretty convincing as a Wolfman.
No,
So,
they do good.
Yeah, that's pretty phenomenal makeup.
Because it's not just like putting glue on his face and then throwing hair at him and hoping it sticks. Like, it's gotta have the flow that hair would have on a face, like of a wolf, but he's a man, so you gotta kind of combine those two.
Even the little prosthetic nose doesn't look half bad.
Yeah,
That's pretty cool.
It's not bad. So, and this movie was a huge success for Universal.
Yeah.
And it is listed in a book called 1001 Movies You Must See Before You Die, which states that the film remains the most recognizable and most cherished version of the werewolf myth.
Wow. I mean, I believe it.
Yeah, pretty cool. So, some kind of cool stuff. We're going to talk about two more things, just some cool stuff that came from this movie, and then we'll talk about its kind of reception and legacy.
Okay.
But I just got to find where I put these notes. There's a couple things that came from this movie that aren't actually in line with like werewolf folklore.
Sure.
So Kurt Siedmach took some liberties to kind of create his own thing,
As writers always do.
So first one is using silver implements to kill a werewolf.
That's not part of the original.
That's not part of the original folklore.
Holy
That
smokes.
is 100% made up for this film.
Kurt, what a legacy. You
Yeah, that's a huge
single-handedly changed the whole idea of a werewolf forever.
That's pretty much all the I'm gonna shatter everyone's image of a werewolf. So that's the first one.
Okay.
The second one was the pentagram thing.
Okay, sure.
That he sees in the hand. That was not as commonly known, but that was also made for this movie.
Okay.
The next one is actually wasn't from this movie, but it was from one of the not the sequel movies, but from Frankenstein and the Wolfman, when he reappears.
Yeah.
So the fact that a werewolf turns into a wolf during the full moon was made up for that movie.
Wow.
So that's a huge one too.
That is a huge one. So before, it was just more like Peter Stump, where there was some witchcraftery or some artifact or something that was doing it.
Exactly.
Had nothing to do with the moon.
Exactly.
That's amazing.
And the reason they made that a thing was it was just kind of part of the movie. There was a full moon, and they're like, that's just happens to be because the Wolfman's dead at the beginning of the movie.
Okay.
But the full moon comes and rises him from the dead, and they're like,
Oh.
that's how. There's just something around the moon that rises him back from the dead, and so from that, the folklore of you turn into a werewolf when the full moon comes out.
Okay, that's nuts because that's not only you changed werewolf lore forever. That's like pop culturally referenced across so much stuff.
Yeah, those are huge. Those are big ones. So yeah, those were all made up for this movie for the character of the Wolfman.
Wow. Way to go, Kurt.
Interesting stuff. Yeah, very very creative and yeah, like locked in.
No kidding.
On what werewolves are, what we know them as.
That dude woke up with a vision and he freaking crushed it.
I guess I should say, kind of in reference to that this movie, in conjunction with two other Universal monster movies, are the only Universal monster movies that are not based on a literary source. They're either based on myths or legends or folklore, stuff like that.
Okay.
Can you guess what the other two are?
That are not based on a literary source?
Correct.
The Mummy?
The Mummy is one.
Okay. And then The Creature from the Black Lagoon?
And The Creature from the Black Lagoon. Yeah, great guesses.
Okay.
So those ones are just from the creative minds of writers at Universal Studios.
Wow.
So these three.
That is pretty cool.
Yeah, cool stuff. So there have been a few remakes and spin-offs from this movie. As I said, there's 3 other movies that Universal produced pre-1960s that involved the Wolfman. Post that time, there's a 2010 remake that we mentioned at the beginning of this episode, directed by Joe Johnston and starring Benicio del Toro.
Very good movie.
And in 2014, it was announced, or a reboot was announced, that Universal Studios would start putting out their Dark Universe.
Yep.
Since that time, the only one we've actually seen is The Mummy with Tom Cruise. And it wasn't great. It wasn't great. So
if you listen to last week's episode, The Mummy, you'll have learned all about that as well.
We'll talk about that.
Yep.
So, yeah, that was kind of a letdown. But before that, they were obviously talking about all the other Universal monster movies they were going to do.
Yeah.
And in 2016, they started getting underway for another Wolfman movie.
Oh.
They hadn't started...
Just like pre-production
Just
stuff?
like pre-production, like who's going to direct it? Who's going to star it?
Yeah.
And at the time, a director hadn't been named, but they were starting to toss out ideas for who to direct, who they wanted for the leading role. And in 2016, it was suggested that Hollywood superstar Dwayne Johnson was going to portray the Wolfman.
I'm not sure I have...
That is the correct face to make.
I'm not sure what feelings I've got about that.
Exactly, right? So, but that fell through.
Okay.
So he's not going to play the Wolfman. In 2020, it was announced that the film would star and be directed by Ryan Gosling.
Ooh.
Which I could actually see, right?
Way better.
Way better choice.
No shade against The Rock, but he's got his own lane.
No,
and
it's not like...
being a werewolf is not it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Sadly, that one fell through.
Oh, that was so good.
I'm bummed because they wanted him to direct and star, but then they were like, well, maybe he should just focus on the acting piece, and then it actually fell through. But just last year, officially, it's been announced that Lee Wannell will be directing the Wolfman movie.
Wait, and it's back on?
And it's back on, and it's set to release in January of 2025.
You're kidding me.
That's way soon.
That's right around the corner.
Right?
That's right around the corner.
So soon? Yeah, it's expected to release January 17th of 2025. And that is cited from 2021.
Sure.
So there may be some give to that, but... Because, yeah, that's just a few months away now.
Oh, okay. I just found this article. It's also from Blumhouse.
Okay, cool. I was going to say,
which means it's going to be an actually scary movie.
It will, because so the director Lee Wannell, his filmography. So he was a writer.
It was supposed to be released October 25th of this year.
Oh,
that is a huge bummer. Sorry.
Bummer. So they had to push it back.
Yeah.
So the leading actor is Christopher Abbott, who it sounds like he's mostly done like independent type films.
Sure.
But the director was a writer whose works include Insidious and Insidious 2.
Oh, brother.
And then his directorial debut was Insidious 3.
Okay.
He is set to direct this film.
Yeah, so it's going to be good.
It's going to be scary.
It's not going to be a Tom Cruise. No shade from... Well, actually, a little shade from Tom Cruise. Because The Mummy was freaking terrible.
It let us down a little bit.
It was not...
Sorry,
it was supposed
Tom.
To be they tried to make it a Marvel movie instead of just scary like it was supposed to be scary.
Like, come on. I hope they redo that one.
Yeah.
Scratch it. Start over.
Yep.
So anyway, so that one is in the works.
Dude, I had no idea. I've usually got my finger on the pulse of...
I know, you're good at it.
Werewolf related movie news, and I had no idea this was coming out.
Wow. Yeah, so just a few months, we could be watching this in the theater.
We're going to have to watch it together.
Yeah, I'm excited.
Alrighty.
Looking forward to this one. So that's The Wolfman.
Wow. We got highs, we got lows. We talked about torture, and we have a good cliffhanger of the new movie coming out here in a couple months. That's great.
Yeah, we're definitely going to have to talk about that once it's released.
Yeah. Dang. That would have been great if it had kept its October 25th. That would have been like just a few days from this episode.
So soon, yeah. Well, we'll wait till January.
Right on.
But there you go, folks. So if we said anything that is wrong or you don't agree with, we checked our facts. We're right.
Yeah.
But if there is,
if you feel like arguing with Wikipedia, then go ahead and send us an email.
Yeah, good luck. But if there is, shoot us an email at hello.otherbrothers.studio.
Yeah, and one more time, just in case we hadn't mentioned it previously in the episode, that's hello@otherbrothers.studio.
We also have social media, so check us out on Instagram at Low Grade Research Pod.
Mm-hmm.
Shoot us a DM. I'll definitely check those.
Yep.
I'll even read them.
Yep. You won't get... Well, you'll get left on red, but you won't get a response.
I'll read as much as I can without clicking the message.
Read the preview lines for
That's
it anyway.
right.
There you go. There you go. We'll almost read the message that you send us, so please feel free to do it. Okay, and if you guys want to know more, the best and greatest source... Actually, when we're talking about movies, there's two good sources. You can check out the article on Wikipedia for The Wolfman, or you can also head on over to IMDb.
One of our favorite sources.
Yeah, so two good ones.
It's like the Wikipedia for movies.
It certainly is.
Thanks, everyone.
Okay, thanks, buddy. Catch you next week.
See ya.